All right, here we go. So I'm Ryan Hofer from Debt by Natural Causes, and we're talking today with Maddie Foley. How you doing, Maddie?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, I just skimmed over your article um, on the Acupuncture Can Change the World Substack
hmm
um, about OCOM and your experience there, and you were the student representative to the OCOM board.
Yes.
Um, And when was that? Was that 2022, 2020
I
to
think I
2022?
did it like the end of 2020 to the end of 2022, I want to say, because I didn't do it my last year. Um, yeah, so it was like mid-pandemic, early mid-pandemic.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then the school closed in 2024, right? So
Yeah,
not this past summer, but the summer of 2024.
right.
So
Right.
just a little bit after you left.
Yeah, my class was the second to last graduating
Right,
class.
right. Okay. So right before, yeah, and you write about that. So just tell us about how you remember that and experienced it.
It was crazy. I mean, I got involved in student government in my first year at OCOM just as like a first year rep to like the student leadership or like the student OCOM Student Association, I think is what it called. Yeah, OSA. And mostly because people were really unhappy, and I thought that I could be a useful bridge between the students and between administration and between faculty, because it seemed to me at the beginning that there was like a mismatch of
Mm,
expectations, and it was a new program, and that this is
mm.
actually kind of an important component, because OCOM shifted its focus a few years before I started to start a entry level doctorate program,
Mm.
as opposed to like an entry level 4 year master's degree. They tried to promote this doctorate as part of a greater effort for the field to push towards the doctorate being the standard degree versus a
Okay.
master's degree. Because in
Okay.
acupuncture, for a long time, people would just get a master's. Could be 3 years if you didn't do herbs. Herbs would add at least another year to study.
Mm,
And then you had the option to do like a 2-ish year postgraduate professional degree that was designed more for people in practice. And
mm,
that's more, that was how people earn the doctorate designation
mm.
previously. So there's this kind of greater shift in the acupuncture field to now make it so everybody who finishes an acupuncture school program has a doctorate. And
Right. Right.
that I have a lot to say about that,
Yeah, I
but
was going to ask you about it.
yeah, for introductory purposes,
Okay.
I'll stay on topic for now.
But
So yeah,
you were in the doctorate? You were a student in the doctorate program?
yeah, so I was
Okay.
part of the first cohort of this new doctorate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there, because
Wow.
it was new, there were a lot of problems that came along with it. At the same time as my cohort started, we had a new president who started, and there were
Yeah.
a lot of new faculty who started too. So there was like a big shift in leadership in the previous years, like culminating towards when I started there. And it became apparent to me pretty early on that there were some reasons that there were a lot of vacancies, and there were some reasons that there were a lot of problems, and I was kind of trying to get down to the bottom of it in an
Mm,
empathetic and caring way, and me being me, of course, getting too involved. So
mm,
after my first year there, and I applied to be the student rep to the board, because I realized that the student association actually didn't have that much to do with the other branches of leadership at the school, and
mm,
being the board rep seemed like a good way to do that. So I
mhm.
did that for my second and third year there.
Okay. Okay.
And that's how I got involved. The board, my general impressions of it were that, um, I will say this: everybody there was very well-meaning and cared about
Hmm.
what they did.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
I think they were, I'll say, out of touch with the reality of the nature of the profession and
Mm,
how it was changing. And of course, the student debt issue was just kind
Yeah.
of overhanging
Yep.
cloud
Yep.
that is a huge reason that the school closed and that the profession's in decline.
Yep. Yeah.
So my whole, you know, approach to the board was kind of being like, what you guys are doing with the doctorate has a lot of problems. It's not working very well. And maybe we should be talking about like how to create a leaner and more efficient program
Yeah.
that isn't as expensive. Because when I was there, they raised tuition, I think twice.
Yeah.
Um, and this is after verbal promise to cohorts when they started that
Ugh.
they wouldn't do that.
Oh
And
no. Mm.
it wasn't in writing, nobody signed anything, but that was the standard, is that you graduated with the tuition that you started at. And
Ugh.
that didn't happen
Yeah.
for the cohorts that graduated after me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think so. I attended our board meetings. I want to say they were quarterly, and if you've served on a board before, you'd know that actually like not much day-to-day operational things happen at the executive level. It's mostly reviewing where we're at in the budget cycle, and for schools it's mostly reviewing where we're at in the application cycle, like looking at next year's cohort and how big it's going to be, because the schools really depend on the entry level years, right?
Right.
Where
Right.
they're the biggest as people drop
Oh,
down. So
this right. That's as good as it gets. Right. The
yeah,
initial, and then the attrition hits and it
yeah,
goes down. So,
yeah.
right.
Years 2 and 3, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
Which says a lot
it's
on
part
it.
of their budgetary plan. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you got to plan for that stuff, but at a certain point, it's like if your attrition rate gets up there, I think you got to start to ask like, what's our admissions process?
Yeah.
And I mean, so I guess I should say I was the student rep to
Hmm.
the NUNM board, to let everybody know that, for 2 years at NUNM. Um, and when you say like, oh, we went over, that stuff, I'd be like, I would have loved if we had gone over, talked about, enrollment, like actual numbers,
Yeah.
because that was one of my things too. I'm like, we're tuition dependent. Like this is it. Like
You're like,
this
how
is
many students do we have?
yeah, yeah. Or to even go over, I don't recall ever even going over like the actual numbers
Hmm.
at the board meeting, like after they were set, like through the fall, or saying like, here's our goal, here's what we had, here's what we're thinking. So partly you're saying like, oh man, like I wish we had that, got
But what
into
did
that
you talk about?
detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. What are
that's
we,
kind of
yeah.
standard, right? And there would be like
Yeah.
a moment. I don't know if they gave you this. Like, I would have, I think, 5 or 10 minutes each meeting, to kind of give a student update,
Yeah.
and like talk about like what students are up to, and I'd be like, like we're not doing well, and
Right. Right. Yeah. What can you
and
say? Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know what
and
to
the
say.
faculty rep gave an update too, and he was always like, "Oh, the faculty are doing great," and I was like, "No, they're not." Like, so yeah, there was a lot of copium that I think
Yes.
people were smoking pretty hard.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I know. And I had looked at, when I was getting into looking at audits and I was looking at OCOM stuff, and I'm like, this does not look good, from the outside looking a year past, right? When it comes out, it's like, ooh, that does not look good. And then it was weird, yeah, watching it from the outside, um, too, because there's an announcement that like no plans to close, and then 2 months later, like we're closing.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think
So
my first board meeting, I said something along the lines of, we OCOM postulates itself as being like the Johns Hopkins of acupuncture schools. Like people call it medical school.
yeah.
And not only are people in the city where we're located unaware of that, but
Hmm.
that doesn't hold a lot of weight with like the rest of the medical world or like the
Hmm.
general public. And I was like, and I think that's a problem. And I was like, the other problem is that a lot of people are getting online right now and
Hmm.
saying that they're applying for uh and you're gonna have to remind me of the terminology, where people are defrauded and they're applying for
Oh,
relief of their loans
borrower
through
defense?
borrower defense. And
That
I
was your
there's
first
a yeah.
year you brought that up?
Yeah, yeah, and
Wow.
Lisa Poole was headlining a lot of it. And I think she still is, and she was
Uh-huh.
saying,
Yeah.
getting online and being very public and saying that she
Right.
was defrauded by her acupuncture school, and that was part of their borrower's defense argument. And I was like,
Right.
what are we going to do about this? Like, that looks
Oof.
really bad for us.
Yeah.
And not to mention, like, there are active rumors circulating that we're going to close in the next couple years. And what are we going to
Wow.
say about that when we're trying to attract people to our school?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Right.
their answer for me was you're so great.
Bless your
Thank you.
heart.
Bless your heart. Thank you for being here.
That's
We
amazing.
love you.
We love the
And
way that your mind works there.
yeah, yeah. So it sounds like you got a lot of that too, because they were, and they were definitely tired of me by the end of year two. And like, I mean, I think they got tired of me early on, but I was just like, like, this is what's going on. Like,
Right.
what are we
Yeah.
going to
This
do
is the
about it?
reality.
Yeah. And I was like,
Yeah.
let's figure something out. Like, let's keep it going. And
Right.
and they
Yeah.
said pretty consistently to me, granted, this was three three or years before they closed, that OCOM was doing great, and we have no
Mm.
plans to close, and there's no indication that we're going to. And
Oof.
we had just gotten a cash infusion of pandemic loans
Right. Right.
that
Yeah.
helped with some short-term things, but
Right. Yeah.
the numbers never went up. um
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that in some cases, the pandemic money prolonged things, right?
Quite
Rather
possibly.
than
Yeah.
shortened them. But it was a little bit frustrating for me sometimes where it's like 2 or 3 years after COVID or after we had gone back to normal, it's like, yeah, COVID. It's like, okay, but like we gotta move on, like live in the now, like, and that money's now spent. So, and enrollment's not coming back.
Right.
And I think one thing that was rough is that like the whole conversation, like you said, like online, people are talking about all these topics and things like the demographic cliff, and how like college, the number of people is going to be fewer and then the percentage is going to reduce also. And it's like, we're tuition dependent. Like that's us and we don't have an endowment. Um, so like what's the plan? Um, and I think you wrote in your piece, it was like there was there was no plan, or it was very like vague and
Yeah.
um
The plan was like,
insufficient.
we're just so great, and we're just gonna
Yeah,
keep going.
right. Yeah,
No.
yeah. I think that's part of it is like there's a real like it's like too special to fail. It's like
Yeah.
there's an ideological commitment to this cause, and so how could like it's like sheer willpower sort of, or like sheer love and willpower, Care Bear stare or something into
Oh yeah.
making it work.
I mean, they always talked about how they want to attract students who are passionate, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
now I
Yeah.
realize, like, if you're passionate, you're a sucker. Like, because
Well,
I'm
that's part of the
passionate, like
problem.
I was,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
in many ways I still am, but it's like you're willing to sign on
Yes.
something that you should not, if you were
I
worried
think
about your
yeah,
future
it
because you
makes you
care about.
gullible. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
Vulnerable.
they sell people, or they sold people with their beautiful building and their reputation they've coasted on for 20 plus years. And you
Yeah.
know that, like, it's marketing. We want
Mm.
passionate leaders, and then they got
Hmm.
one and they're like, oh, not like that. So
We didn't mean that.
yeah.
We didn't mean realistic
Yeah,
passion.
yeah, we meant like people who will give us a lot of money and
Yeah. Right.
do so in the name of
Yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah. Well, and yeah, and the money is it's federal, it's student loans. It's not
yeah,
like a lot of people most of the time, right? The large like the school like OCOM and NUNM like need the student loan. That's such a big proportion, right, of the tuition
yeah,
that And that's why 2020 fall 2026 is going to be like a big deal when the loan caps change.
Oh yeah.
Um, but so I guess, is there anything else you want to say about that? Or how did you, feel when it was announced that it was closing?
I laughed. I mean, just when they actually admitted it, like that things were
Right.
not going well, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, like there's
Yes.
no way they're gonna pull this together in the next 6 months. Cause like
Yeah.
maybe like at the time when I was there, I was like, what if we sold the building? And they
Yeah.
weren't willing to entertain that.
Right.
Seriously, I think they were concerned even then that the value of the building had declined because of
Right.
commercial real estate crashing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's a pretty specialized space.
Right.
And we were
Right.
also in like the worst neighborhood in Portland. So like
Mm,
that didn't really help. But they
mm.
didn't like even really they didn't put it up for sale, at the time.
Right. Right.
And there were
Yeah.
some like restrictions around, a big concern was their debt to income ratio, keeping them in good standing with their bank. And that's what like the
Right.
entire focus of a lot of their finances were at the time was
Yep.
maintaining solvency with
Yeah.
their bank and
Yeah.
just making it look like things were okay enough on paper, which in some ways they did, but it's
Right.
like this is kind of like how our economy functions, right? Is quarter to quarter. It's not
Yeah.
like year
Right.
to year. Like, what are we going
Yeah.
to do in 5 years when nobody comes? Like,
Yeah.
it was like, all right, well, we got five more students signed up this quarter,
Yeah.
and, we're five closer to our goal of 60, which has never happened in this space. So,
Right. I
um,
mean,
yeah.
that's yeah, that was one thing as I started getting into the topic, I realized like, wait a second, like this a bunch of the schools are in debt too. All the
Oh,
students
yeah.
are in debt.
Uh-huh.
They're taking debt money, but then they're in debt. And a lot of this is tied into the value of their real estate on
Yes.
paper.
Yeah.
And yet, like, it costs money to maintain that real estate, right? So every year, like, there's depreciation
Hmm.
that reduces that value. But then once you actually, it's only worth what somebody will pay for it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing is like once you put it up for sale and then sell it, then you get a reality check.
Yeah.
And that's what happened, right? When they actually evaluated the value of the building, then they had like negative net assets in the
Yeah. I
end.
mean, because nothing else was worth anything, right?
Right,
Like,
right, yeah.
and I think, as far as I understand, the bank repoed more or less everything. And this is like a
Yeah.
lot of like low value stuff. Like the rest of the materials were like tables,
Yeah.
like massage tables. Probably the most valuable
Yeah.
thing was the herbal medicinary and the
Mm,
library. And I
mm,
think there was a sale of some stuff.
hmm.
But there's a lot of concern about the library because we had a lot of like books that like don't exist anywhere else or like
Yeah.
outside of China or like
Mm,
clinical notes or manuscripts of successful practitioners. I mean, OCOM was involved in this
mm,
translation project with Kamwa Chung. Um,
mm.
I think the museum would have been in possession of the materials, but I don't know. So there's like a lot of complicated stuff that's beyond my
Yeah.
purview. But like, essentially at the end of the day, the bank owned everything. The bank lost money on this
Oh
for
yeah.
sure. And the
Yeah.
building's still for sale. As far as I know, nobody's gonna buy it. So yeah, unless, somebody wants to go try to like replicate this in the same space, like, but
Right.
there's no funding for that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's a real tragedy because, it's not the school is not just the real estate and the facilities, but it's the faculty, the
Yeah.
knowledge, the
Yeah.
library, it is like the passion and the mission.
That's
And
what the
then
school is. Yeah.
yeah, but then when, the facilities and the real estate don't match up with that, or like the level of the number and the like compensation of administration, right, doesn't match up with that. When you say like, wow, we got 5 people, we're trying to get 60 people, it's like, how how much should you really be spending on admin? Like, how much should that president really be getting paid if we're talking about like, can we get 60 people in?
Right.
Right. And hey, here's our median net income of our graduates.
Yeah.
So like just this wild disconnect between reality and like the vision of what will happen next year, next year, next year, next year. And that was just, yeah, it's all crazy when you start to get a full picture of it and then look into the details. So what do you think about the overall, the picture of the profession and like, can anything be done about it? What do you think can be done?
I mean, I think if nothing changes, we're beyond fucked,
Mm,
and acupuncture is going to not go anywhere, but it's just going to be
mm,
rebranded and co-opted by people who weren't trained as licensed acupuncturists, which I have,
mm,
I, you know, I have mixed feelings about, like people are pretty upset about the dry needling issue and,
mm,
people want acupuncture. There is a demand for it. It's very useful, and
mm,
other practitioners who want to do it are going to find a way to do it because really we're not that tough of an obstacle as a profession as far as uh,
mm,
expanding scope like we had in Oregon here.
mm,
Um, so I think this people being acupuncturists, TM, what LACs, right,
mm,
is a dying field. And I mean, have a lot of hope with the community acupuncture movement because that's where
mm,
I've aligned my energy.
mm,
And the community acupuncturists seem to be willing to be the adults in the room and to plan long term for this decline. I mean, I've put a lot
mm,
of support into Pocatech, and I think
mm.
we have to reinvent the wheel and the model of delivery because what we've been
Yeah,
doing is not working, and the insurance system
yeah,
is working, and it's
right,
getting worse and worse
right,
by the day. And this is
right.
not exclusive. Like
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is what I try to drive home to is like none of these problems are exclusive to the natural medicine
yeah,
field, right?
yeah, yeah.
We're just
Hmm.
small. Like
Yeah,
we're just
right.
small and powerless. So we're feeling like the crush of like the
Yeah,
collapse of healthcare and the collapse of education. Like,
yeah, yeah,
we're kind of on the front lines of that because it's like,
yeah,
the weakest will get, obliterated first, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
hope is in acupuncture itself and in people who willing to be creative about how they deliver it and how we educate. There's a
Yeah.
lot of barriers currently around the apprenticeship model. So it's
Mm,
basically non-viable as long as our current licensing system is in place.
yep.
And a lot of states have really restrictive rules around apprenticeship that make it basically impossible to do. And I think
Mm,
actually an apprenticeship model would be really great for a lot of reasons,
mm-hmm,
namely that acupuncturists are really obsessed with tradition, and that's the
mm,
traditional way that it was taught,
right,
which is
right.
not very efficient, right?
Mm,
That's why I support like grassroots organizations like Pocatech. But like
mm-hmm,
that's another model of education that I think should be flexible and should be allowed and people should be able to do.
right.
So I'm throwing my weight in smaller institutions like Pocatech, and I don't know much about the Middle Way Institute in Mount Vernon, but they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to do something similar to Pocatech, just without the community acupuncture focus.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that gives me hope. If they continue to grow, they'll be successful.
yeah.
And like there's a lot of problems on like a national level with our licensing body and our accreditation bodies that
Mm-hmm.
create additional administrative barriers to
Mm,
similar programs being set up.
yeah.
But if they're willing to be more flexible, or if they just go away altogether, which they will because nobody's going to continue to do this, um,
Mm,
then hopefully it'll be easier for similar schools like Pocatech to open, or Middle Way to
mm-hmm.
open, which I would love to see.
Yeah.
But it's looking pretty bad right now, and because other institutions and other groups have not taken the same long-term planning approach that Pocatech has,
Mm,
it may be too little too late. And like the future is essentially right now, and Pocatech started planning for this future well over 10 years ago.
yeah.
And I think this is their 11th cohort that they're on, and it's their biggest cohort yet, but it's still
Yeah.
like 13 people or something like that, which is, those aren't the numbers we need to see in order to make a widespread impact that all of us would like to see as far as delivering this modality.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough because the the status quo hinders if the status quo isn't responsive, because it's kind of by definition, status quo is kind of negative because it's hindering the new stuff from
Hmm.
coming in and change from happening. And I mean, that's kind of the creative destruction of the new loan caps
Hmm.
is that my view is like, okay, like it's done. Like you can't do it in the same way anymore. You can't do these like 3 or 4 year graduate degrees um, where people can't, they don't have the money to live,
Hmm.
and then they shouldn't have to take out large loans for tuition, but then also they're having to take out loans for just living expenses. So it's like, okay, like let's do something different. Like let's leverage what we have to get to the next thing, but the status quo kind of says no, we're gonna like you said, you mentioned this in your article, is that I think you said like they fed on the status quo until it destroyed them
Yeah.
or something like that. And that's kind of the problem, is that like there's no like reckoning with like a realistic projection of like the next 3 years kind of. So it's like, well, let's just white knuckle it and hold on. And partially too, I think it's to protect people who work at the institutions,
Hmm.
which makes sense. It's like, yeah, I don't want those people to like lose their job, or I understand they have their values, but like you keep going like this and then it's just collapse and everybody loses their job, and we're not producing safe and effective practitioners. So the mission dies
Yeah.
too at that point. Or at that, or then it has to change. But then like that's so hard because now you don't have any like monetary, financial, and like institutional um capacity left
Yeah.
to do something new, and so it's just really scrappy. um
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. um well, I guess sort of the last thing I want to ask you about is sort of related to that, of like how do you view like leadership in the space and like getting to getting these changes going, um, so that acupuncture can keep being like accessible. There can keep Practitioners can keep being trained, and then they can actually start like viable practices. Like what sorts of what's how what leader institutional, like large scale or on micro scale too, but what how do you view that issue?
Yeah, I mean it's tough because there's kind of a divide in the profession right now between
Mm,
community acupuncturists who are leaning into the grassroots flexibility and really leaning into volume.
mm,
And then there's a divide between people who are specialists and
yeah.
want to work within the insurance system and want to integrate into the healthcare system. And I think integration is a noble goal, but like we're so far off from that, and like
Yeah.
absolutely like nobody is looking at acupuncture right now when we're talking about Medicare cuts. We're talking about
Mm,
like thousands of hospitals closing, like
mm,
acupuncture is not just going to like swoop in and like save that situation, and
mm,
therefore it's like, yeah, it would be great if everybody had acupuncture and had better health outcomes and could save the insurance system money. That's the crazy thing about it, is it could save the insurance system so much money. Like I've been in practice
yeah.
for 2 years and I've prevented like multiple people from getting surgeries. Like they ended up
Mm,
not needing them because they did so well, and like
yeah.
that's like, that would have cost their insurance company like $50,000 or more,
Right.
probably more.
Right.
And like, they paid me like maybe like $60 plus their
Yeah.
copay,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the insurance did, so it's
Right,
like
right.
kind of ridiculous. So like there's this huge mismatch, right, between like the value that acupuncturists can provide
Yeah.
and the recognition of that. And I think the leadership focus of acupuncture has been kind of putting the cart before the horse but for the last couple decades, where
Yeah.
it's less about providing access, providing care, providing public education, and
Mm.
more about like, oh, well, we should all be doctors so everybody respects us.
Yeah.
And that's part of the mismatch too. And I fear that a lot of acupuncture leadership dialogue is still around that integration goal that
Right. Right.
has failed time and time again and is
Yeah.
only getting worse now. Again, with reality. So I don't see a whole lot of. There's some like, we talk about this a bit on the OAA, which is our professional organization. Like, there's just
Mm.
been like the beginning of the conversation about what Lisa's been calling the acupocalypse.
Mm.
And people just kind of don't want to believe it, and a lot of their focus professionally is more about protecting the scope of practice so that other people don't do dry needling, which failed in the
Mm.
state. We have dry needling in the state now.
Mm.
And negotiate with insurance companies and trying
Mm.
to increase our scope of practice so that we can bill more codes so that we can get more reimbursement from insurance companies,
Mm.
which
Yeah.
is a path that is fraught with
Yeah.
folly, right? Because insurance reimbursement is going to keep going down. Like, they've made that clear, and
Mm.
they're going to make billing more and more difficult. This has been a really bad couple of years for acupuncture insurance in Oregon,
Oh,
um, and we're one of the few states where you can bill insurance for
right.
acupuncture, which was a big win for us, I think.
Yeah.
But it comes with the pitfalls of the rest of the medical system that's dependent on it. And there's a reason that nurses and doctors and other medical professionals are running for the hills, trying to do what they can to
Yeah.
avoid the pitfalls of insurance. So I think that's going nowhere fast, and I don't see leadership um, totally embracing that and being willing to pivot in the direction of public education and in the direction of access as much, because I
Mm.
think they're worried about their survival and their viability as small practices. And
Mm.
while I really understand that, um, I think the writing is pretty much on the wall, and there's not a lot of planning happening outside of the community acupuncture world around that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Even if now they are starting to acknowledge that, oh yeah, our licensing body might collapse. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh yeah, that might happen in a couple years, and what are we gonna do about it? Fuck
Yeah.
if I know. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. All right. Yeah, it's like there's a lot of parallels to naturopathic medicine in there.
yeah, it's a similar boat. It really is. And at the
Yeah.
same time, like, there is no limit to, I think, the usefulness of the services that our fields provide,
Yeah.
or the
Yeah.
potential for growth.
Yeah.
So like, people are
That's the
looking for
puzzle.
solutions that we offer, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a conundrum. It's a huge puzzle
Yeah,
to solve at scale too,
right.
you know. Oh, all right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us and to share with us. So I'll stop the recording here. Stick
Okay,
around for a minute.
sure.